All right. Got to get the Facebook groups in here. I know I said last week I wasn't going to be here, but things changed. And we'll get to that here in a second. All right. Got to wait for a couple green check marks here so we can make sure we get the Facebook rooms in here. And we're still waiting. There we go. Welcome into another Dove Valley Deep Divers. I am your host tonight, Erick Trickel, and joining me tonight is Dylan Von Arks. It has been a game of musical chairs for the show tonight. Kenneth Booker was supposed to be here doing the show with Dylan, but some technical issues popped up, and I have plans, so it's going to be a shorter show. But hadn't left home yet, so I was able to jump in and take the place. But Dylan, thank you for joining me. How are you feeling? Did you have a good Thanksgiving? How's the Broncos season going for you? Like, just what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had a nice little Thanksgiving with my family here, just my parents, my brother, and my grandma. Had a great time, ate. It's actually my mom's birthday, and today I got to sneak away here for an hour to talk Broncos with you guys, but they're saving me some food, so don't worry about me.
Well, good news for your mom is that we will have to keep it short again, so make sure you guys get your burning questions in here quickly, because it's probably not even going to be a half-hour show tonight. We started late because of technical issues, me jumping in again. But yeah, I mean, it was a good Thanksgiving here in my household. I hope everybody here in the chat had a good Thanksgiving as well. Hope you all stayed safe, didn't drink and drive, and all of that. There were a couple accidents where I live from people doing just that. So hope everyone is staying safe. But we're not here to talk about Thanksgiving. We're here to talk about Broncos football. They are sitting with a 7-5 record.
Yep.
Yeah. And finally getting close to the bye week. We have one more game to get there. We got to take care of the Cleveland Browns. And of course, this past offseason, the Denver Broncos traded Jeudy to the Cleveland Browns. And I guess he had some comments about the Broncos. I wasn't expecting to be here, so I didn't get a chance to read what he had said yet. Dylan, if you want to take it off, I'll go read what he said.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Basically, he was asked about how he feels about coming back to play in Denver, and pretty short quote. He said, I want to come back up there and, quote, whip their ass. So obviously, he's been pretty inconsistent whether he's been with the Browns, and especially with his time in the Broncos. He's picked up things these last couple games, but if history is to repeat itself as it usually does with Jeudy, he's probably going to have some drops and get his conditioning in when PS2 is locked up on him.
Yeah, and I do remember seeing one thing one of the times when I got on Blue Sky or Twitter, one of the two that I got on today, and did just a quick check, that he made a comment about how he knows he had some drops, kind of, as you said, but there were issues beyond his control, which there were some play calling issues. I mean, I remember everybody ripping Pat Shurmur to shreds over his usage of Jeudy. But again, there were issues with Jeudy. His rookie year, he had 12 drops on the season. Then he went on to have 12 drops over the next 3 seasons, and he's currently sitting at 4 drops in this year in Cleveland. Drops are a consistent issue with him, and the biggest thing with Jeudy about the Broncos moving on is, like, they tried to get him involved often. They tried to have game plans be around him, and sometimes they were successful, and sometimes he would literally drop the ball. I remember, what game was it last year? Towards the end of the season, he had that pass in the back of the end zone where he just couldn't get his feet in bounds because he was being a long strider runner that he is.
Mm-hmm.
What game was that?
Was that the same one where he was talking a bunch of mess to Steve Smith, or was that just another instance of him being a-hole, we'll call it?
That might have been that game. Yeah, now that you mention it, I think it was that game. But yeah, I mean, he's always been one to talk a little bit, and never really hid his emotions all that much. Wore his emotions on the sleeve, pre-game, post-game, all that. Not surprised. I am interested in seeing how this battle goes between him and Patrick Surtain tomorrow. It's definitely one of those ones to watch. So yeah, I mean, Surtain's having an amazing year. I did an article about how he should be one of the favorites for Defensive Player of the Year, but he won't be because he's not a pass rusher. and it's so unfortunate that pass rushers it's basically a pass rusher award anymore. But Jerry Jeudy, I think, will get a couple catches, just maybe not those big plays that he gets every now and then.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Jeudy, he was just never consistent here, and I think he will get his catches. There is some precedent here in terms of they were teammates at Alabama battling and on the Broncos as well, so there's a lot of familiarity there, and it'll be an interesting matchup for sure. But like you said, he's a lot more talk than he is production, and obviously, I mentioned he played pretty well the past 2 games against the Steelers and I believe it was the Saints. So yeah, he had a couple good games, but as we know, as Broncos country, he very, very inconsistent. So I'm looking forward to seeing what PS2 can do. And like you mentioned, yeah, he should get Defensive Player of the Year consideration, but unless he's getting like 10 interceptions, I don't think it's happening. I think what was the last one? Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah,
Years ago
Stephon
now.
Gilmore.
So.
And I went back, and in that article, I talk about how many times it's happened. And in like the last 10 years, Stephon Gilmore is the only non-pass rusher to have won. I mean, prior to that, the like 2012 to 2000 to 2012, there were multiple linebackers, multiple defensive backs, but it's just not that the way doesn't go that way anymore. And I mean, talking about him, you can say he's a little bit of an underdog for the defensive player of the year, defensive player of the year award. And speaking of underdog fantasy. Underdog is the place to play if you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. You can join over 5 million fans who are already playing on Underdog with their pick'em game. You can win money by making entries with your favorite players. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog.
With our champs game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on player stats like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Like, for example, will Bo Nix have higher or lower than 220.5 passing yards this week? Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose.
So download the Underdog app today and use code MHuddle to get up to 1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the Underdog app today and use our code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown, just got to select higher or lower on Underdog.
Must be 18 plus, 19 plus Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY.
And thank you, Underdog Fantasy, for the sponsorship. We appreciate that. Now, I saw in the chat, somebody talked about another matchup in this upcoming game, and that is Myles Garrett, who just had a game where he went absolutely wild against Garrett Bowles. And this is a matchup I think to watch because Garrett Bowles has been absolutely phenomenal for the last, 12 games. Like basically all season, he's been playing outstanding football. Yeah, there's been some penalties. There have been a couple really bad holding calls on him that were not holding whatsoever. But, with his history, he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. And then there's another holding penalty where it was a good holding penalty because sometimes you got to protect that quarterback a little bit. And that's what he was doing. So Garrett Bowles and Myles Garrett, this is a matchup I'm really excited to watch. I love watching good trench play go against good trench play. Is there a matchup with this Broncos offense against this Browns defense besides Bowles and Garrett that you're excited to watch?
Outside of that matchup, man, that's a really good one, especially Myles Garrett. He's been a game wrecker, and we know Bo Nix. He's been pretty good. He's had some amazing escapes, getting away from sacks, but overall he's still a little shaky when it comes to pressure. But another matchup I'm looking forward to is whoever Jaquan McMillan is going to be matched up against, because he's struggled a little recently. Obviously, when you have Riley Moss playing as well as he has, despite the injury, and Pat Surtain playing on a defensive player of the year level, although he won't get it. McMillan's been picked on, and they're going to continue to look at that matchup, especially on outside throws. He's gotten a little lost recently, so whoever he ends up with, whether it be Cedric Tillman, although I think he's probably injured. Jerry Jeudy's probably going to be off of PS2. But there's a few guys here that could definitely exploit Jaquan McMillan's little dry streak here.
Yeah, I mean, Jaquan McMillan, and we were talking about this in our group chat after I think it was just after the game last week or this last Monday. His stats from playing off the right side, the right tackle, or the left defensive side, I guess, because it's always facing the ball off the right tackle, aren't bad. But when he gets over to the other side of it, he's playing in the slot off the left tackle. This is where he has some issues. And one thing that I've noticed when going back and watching over him over the last few games where he's struggling, he's getting beat in practically the same way. Teams are throwing these post corner routes at him or these in and outs, and they get him to bite because he's super aggressive in coverage going to his left, and he just doesn't recover as quickly going left and then having to recover going to his right as he does going right and recovering to his left. And teams are taking advantage of that, and they're just dropping it in underneath PJ Locke, who's typically coming over to give that safety help over the top, and then over whoever happens to be working in the flat in the lower zone area, or covering whoever's working that shorter route on that side. So this is something that the Browns, this is something that they do well. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we talked about Jerry Jeudy and Patrick Surtain. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to make it to where Jaquan McMillan is the one covering Jerry Jeudy, because with all of Jerry Jeudy's issues, that is a route he does really well, and that can lead to a lot of issues. But keeping it with wide receiver and cornerback, Cortland Sutton versus Greg Newsome, who I believe is playing. I haven't had a chance to check the injury report or anything like that. So apologies if some of these guys are hurt.
Limited practice, it looks like.
Okay. So if he ends up playing, that is one to watch, because Greg Newsome, despite the issues the Browns are having, he's been having a really good season.
Yeah, especially you get Cortland Sutton on him. Cortland's been having himself a couple good games. He's stacked 5 pretty solid games for him, and seems like he's getting more of a rhythm. Obviously, he still has some of those drop balls that you hate to see, but overall, that Bo Nix Cortland Sutton connection has gotten stronger and stronger, and it's looking like he should probably stay around here for at least another year for his contract, because you want Bo Nix to continue to grow, and you add a couple more weapons to this offense, we could start seeing something a lot more dynamic.
Yeah. And I saw somebody in the chat ask about Bo Nix practicing and Zach Allen. Are they going to play? It looks like they will. They were both full practice today in practice. The only one who wasn't a participant is Riley Moss, so it looks like we are going to be without him this game. But I don't know about you, but when Levi Wallace has seen the field this season, I've enjoyed what Wallace has done. It hasn't been terrible. It's been pretty solid, and it's been good enough to work with the scheme and those that are, what's around him.
Yeah, and it's nice to have a guy like him on the roster, especially with the cornerback injuries. You could even just be a little bit injured, a little dinged up, and be 90%, and that's enough for a wide receiver like a Jerry Jeudy, who's a good route runner, or a Cedric Tillman, who's really fast in the middle of the field, and that could be game over. So it's good to have Levi Wallace coming in and just stepping in that role and having a seamless transition there at the cornerback 2 spot.
Now, I did jump in late, and I did miss this from David McElrath before we ended up going live, saying, "Good evening, Broncos country, 10 and 7, hashtag let's go Bo, hashtag MHH4L, hashtag Buckham × 3, hashtag Denver Broncos for life, and hashtag Knicks for 6. Thank you, Papa Bear. We appreciate the support. Sorry it took us so long to get to you. Again, some technical issues leading to a late start and me having to jump back in. But we sincerely appreciate your support. And we had Michael Ronquillo jumping in saying, "Good evening, Eric and Dylan on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Bo Broncos." Thank you, Michael, again for your support every single week and every single show. it is so appreciated with that. But guys, we are probably going to have to cut it short here in a little bit. Again, I have somewhere that I have to go and be. And so if you have any burning questions, now's the time to get them in. Sorry for the short show again. And then Steve Hale coming in saying, I think the Broncos should show a highlight clip of all of Jeudy's greatest drops right before the game. That should get his attention. That would be funny. What do you think about that? How funny would that be if they did that?
I think that'd be fantastic because we know, just like when we mentioned earlier, Steve Smith made a couple comments about him not living up to his draft status and not being a great receiver as he touts himself. He could get very emotional very quick, and that leads to drops, mistakes, which he has been prone to. So I think that'd be an amazing idea and really fun for Broncos country, especially those attending the game.
Yeah, and it looks like actually they Dylan will be able to go on. It looks like Kenneth has fixed his issues. So we're gonna bring Kenneth in here. Kenneth, how's it going, man? Are you excited for this Broncos Browns game? But before we get to that, did you have a good Thanksgiving, man?
I'm not really a Thanksgiving kind of guy. So I don't know, just holidays in general, whatever. So I kind of just worked extra hours and got that extra money.
Yeah, that's always nice to do. But I mean, we talked a little bit obviously about Jeudy, and we'll get I'll jump out of here in just a couple minutes and pass it off to you and let you voice your opinions and keep the conversation going. But yeah, I mean, what we have on the screen here about showing the highlight clip of Jeudy's greatest drops right before the game. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, right. I used to make that joke about I used to call Jeudy to cheer him up, but the call kept getting dropped. And yeah, it was rough. I don't know. I've always been a Jeudy fan. I feel like he's the guy you got to just feed him the ball because he's gonna have those drops, but his catches are gonna outweigh it. But if you give up on him, it's just like you might as well just get rid of him.
Yeah, and we have String Guy asking if we have a score prediction for this game. I'll give mine here, and then I'm going to be jumping out of here. Again, I have somewhere to go. One of my nephews is in the Christmas Comes to Kenai parade that they do every single year.
That's
so
cool.
I gotta go get to that. But yes, I have the Broncos winning 38-16.
Okay.
I think this defense is going to control this game. But you guys can go to milehighhuddle.com and check out every single Mile High Huddle staffer's score prediction, as well as some of the reasoning for it. But guys, I'm going to jump out of here after this and leave you guys with this to kick off the conversation. Phil coming in saying, good evening, Eric and Dylan. Are we going to be able to run this week? I think they will. But guys, have a good night, and everybody enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you guys for coming in and supporting us. Have a great weekend, and of course, go Broncos.
Go Broncos.
Thanks for hopping in for us, Eric. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, that was awesome. So I got this new camera app for my camera, and it's like crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
But every time you're about to go onto it, something just comes up every time, and I'm like, I'm just gonna have to splurge for a camera. I can't. I don't like that feeling of not being dependable. So.
Oh, you're good, man. Eric popped in here for a little bit, but now you and me get to talk, and it's going to be a good rest of this show now. As Phil brings up here, yes, I believe the Broncos will be able to run the ball. Let me just get some stats here for you. Against the run, the Cleveland Browns are 23rd in the NFL, giving up about 130 yards a game. And, with a Broncos backfield that's been struggling, whether it be Javonte, Estime, or, they're just not finding the hole, especially Javonte. There's a couple runs last week where I know he's getting a lot of flack. Oh, he's not blocking. It's like, or they're not blocking for him. It's like, well, his vision is still a problem, and he's not hitting the holes where he should, or he's jumping into his offensive lineman. So hopefully against a less stout run defense in the Cleveland Browns, we can get some yards churning, whether it be Javonte, whether it be Estime, Jaleel. We just need to get something going. What are your thoughts there, Ken?
I think it's like you just said. It's essentially a running back by committee. Just getting fresh legs out there and being consistently punishing them running the ball, because teams are eventually going to break in the later quarters on that, and then you can also build that play action off of that as well, or that naked bootleg with Bo Nix running up the sideline. Yeah, you got to keep running it, and we just don't have a number one back, so you got to run to everybody, and everybody has their own little things that they're really good at. So it's not the
Yeah,
same.
exactly. Yeah, you got the couple battering rams in Javante and Estime, and then you got that lightning speed from Jaleel, even in the few carries that he gets, and Marvin Mims when they decide to throw him back there to some mixed success, but hopefully they build upon that. Let's see here. I'm gonna grab this comment from Rodney here. Welcome in, Rodney. Thank you for showing up. He says, "Good evening, guys. Hope you all had a happy, wonderful Thanksgiving. Can't wait for WWE War Games and Broncos on Monday night. Go Roman Reigns." I pulled this up specifically. Rodney knows I'm a big wrestling fan, so yeah, it should be a fun one. You know, it's nice too to have something in the off season that I can watch. Have you ever been
to one of the game or matches?
Yeah, I went to a Monday Night Raw actually a couple years ago in Sacramento. I was on hard cam, like 2 rows back, I believe. So you can see me and my brother on TV. So big wresling nerds.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I've been to a WCW back in the day. I went to a WWF one. I used to be really big into it. For some reason, I just kind of fell out of it. I realized I couldn't. It was over when I fell asleep in a cage match. And I was like, oh man, if I fall asleep in a cage match, this is just wasting money. Like, but yeah, I saw Rob Van Dam in that cage match.
Oh, RVD, he's awesome, man.
Which is insane that I would fall asleep on that. It's so exciting to watch. I don't know. I must have just been tired.
Definitely. But here, we're going to circle back to some Broncos talk here. And one key to the game that I have is force Jameis Winston into some turnovers. As we know, he's been a turnover machine throughout his career, and thus far, he has been sacked 14 times, so their offensive line as well is pretty shaky. But thus far this year, he's got in 9 games, he has 4 interceptions and 7 touchdowns. Not very good. Obviously, he's had a couple of fumbles here. We saw in that Steelers game, even though they came out on top, he did have a forced he did fumble towards the end of the game there, which could have sealed the deal. Sean Payton also is very familiar with Jameis Winston in his time with the New Orleans Saints. So I think they'll know how to attack Jameis. Obviously, he's kind of a frantic quarterback. We don't know really what to expect from him game to game, besides like an amazing speech before and after. But what are your thoughts there, Kenneth?
Yeah, Jameis Winston. He's one of those guys that like cancels himself out. He'll throw 30 touchdowns and then throw 30 interceptions. You just don't want him having the ball in the fourth quarter because you never know. I mean, it's a 50-50. He can scramble and throw a 30-yard touchdown to get you in field goal position, or he could throw it right to a defender, and you're like, why? What the heck? Like that was the only defender. That was the only person there was a defender. So, yeah, he's very. It's like Minshew, whatever. Minshew was like that same way when he first beat us in Jacksonville. You just never knew what you're going to get out of him, and every once in a while he would put up some legit numbers and put you on your heels. So we'll see. I think our defense just cancels that out, though. We're not a team that you might get a little extra scramble on us, whatever, but we'll still find a way to make you pay. And if you try to stick it in there in a tight window, PS2 is going to make you pay, but Riley Moss not being there, that's the one I'm not 100% confident with.
Yeah, that will be a little tough. And before you hopped in here, we actually talked a little bit about Levi Wallace, who's filled in pretty decently, actually. And it's going to be exciting to see him do that going forward. Hopefully a seamless transition. It's nice to have a veteran there. And
yeah, definitely.
Speaking about that offensive line and what could lead to turnovers, the Broncos are going to be able to get a lot of pressure. They lead the league in sacks. And the Browns are actually the second worst team in giving up sacks with 47. So if there's going to be defense that gets after him, it's going to be Denver. They might not even have to blitz as much as they love to do that.
Yeah, and we got Benito with 10 sacks. You got Zach Allen. I think he's still out, but he had. Well, no, Jonathan Cooper had 7 sacks. Franklin Myers and Allen had 5 sacks each. And then you got the young rookie with 4. Ellis. So yeah, I would hate to play them as a quarterback because they're just relentless and they come from everywhere. It's not just one guy. You're not looking at TJ Watt the entire time. It's the entire line. So
yeah, exactly. It should be a game where this Broncos defensive line feasts, and really excited to see how they stack up, especially on primetime, man. It's so good to see another primetime game. I know we had one Thursday night against the Saints. It wasn't as great. Like it was a win, but Bo Nix looked a little shaky still then. He had that awkward throw where he kind of hit in between two of his receivers. So this is his chance to really come out in prime time Monday night and show what he's got. There's been a lot of talk about Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, who's going to be that offensive rookie of the year. For my money, obviously biased as hell. I'm taking Bo Nix. He's got the better stats. They have the same record, but they're not on a losing streak like the Commanders have been, especially I know it's a division rival, but that Cowboys game, man, oh my gosh.
It's a long season. Like, I don't know, you could have 5 good weeks, whatever, and then not even be in the conversation anymore. So Jaden Daniels is legit. I've always been a fan of him, even since Arizona State. I actually got laughed at every time I'd bring him up just because how skinny he was. And now he's playing pretty well. But it's that injury that's having him issues with him. And now Bo Nix is running into that situation now. He's not I know he was limited the first week, our first day of practice, whatever, but we'll see if that affects him like it affects Jaden Daniels, because it changed his entire game.
Exactly, yeah. Like you mentioned, Jaden Daniels had a very hot start to this season, and as it's gone on, injuries, Cliff Kingsbury's play calling, maybe they've kind of figured that out a little bit as well, but Bo Nix has caught fire at the right time, 3-time offensive rookie of the week, 3 in a row. Which means, hey, maybe he's going to get his second offensive rookie of the month. So hopefully that happens coming in here.
Yeah, he even got like an offensive player of the week. It had nothing to do with being a rookie. Was one of those was mixed up in there.
Exactly, yeah. So great things to see from a young rookie quarterback. It's been too long since the Broncos have had some hope in that department. But, yeah, and let's circle back a little bit here. Let's talk about just for a quick second here. What did you think about the end of that Raiders-Chiefs game a little earlier today?
Oh, yeah. The Raiders being the Raiders and the Chiefs being the Chiefs. Yeah, that center was pissed. I guess he was clapping to hurry up, and the guy hit his leg. The guard is supposed to notify the center that snap or whatever, and he snapped it, and that was insane. Like, it's almost like you intentionally try to lose the game. That's how bad that was.
Yeah, it's there's a saying, it's sometimes better to be lucky than good, and that's certainly been the Chiefs, at least this last game especially. That's just, I mean, the Raiders are going to Raider, right? That's just kind of their whole bit.
Yeah, right. Like I said, and we were talking about it earlier, I think this is going to come back to bite the Chiefs in the playoffs, and I think they're going to lose their first playoff game.
Yeah, I just don't see how you can sustain winning this many one-score games, and then you saw the one where they lost, the Bills were up multiple scores. So, the Vikings did it was last year or 2 years ago where they won 11 straight. And then you get to the playoffs and you get smoked round 1. So that luck hopefully is going to run out. I'm just hoping, man.
And I saw this. The ref called an illegal motion call that should have been a dead ball play. And then it was 11 seconds. So I don't know about the 10-second runoff. But
yeah,
even at that time they still had that extra second.
And that's the really terrible part about it. Obviously, the refs favor the Chiefs a little more, but at the end of the day, the Raiders left it up to the refs to screw them in that game. Like, you have to get that snap off, and it was similar to our blocked field goal. It's like, hey, there were some calls in the Broncos Chiefs game where it's like, hey, this really sucked, but at the end of the day, you had the chance to put the dagger in, and Alex Forsyth bungles the blocking.
I know ours was, when there's something like that happened to us, was a much bigger moment and a much more consequences with the Super Bowl when we happened to us with Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just got to be, oh man, it's got to be brutal because you don't even know until like afterwards, like the center, like you hike it and you're not paying attention anymore. You're blocking.
Exactly.
And then you're like, what's all this craziness going on? And then you're like, oh my God, this guy doesn't have the ball.
It's rough, man. Hopefully down the stretch here, we'll be playing the Chiefs there at the end of the season. Hopefully we're ready to take them there. Let's get to another matchup I have here. And it's more so a group here going against the Browns. So I have the Broncos linebackers and safeties versus David Njoku, who's a very dynamic weapon. Obviously, he's catching on here a little more as he's got more chemistry with Jameis Winston. About 4 yards a game, but he gets about 8 catches. And the Broncos have had some trouble with tight ends in the past, and especially dynamic ones. We know Travis Kelce, Brock Bowers has looked pretty good, except for this last game. we locked him down pretty good there, but we had to put PS2 on him.
But he looked good in this KC game, though. That was like their entire offense.
Oh, yeah. If this Offensive Rookie of the Year award wasn't just like kind of a quarterback award, much like a lot of these are, Brock Bowers would be at the top of that list. He's balling just out of his mind, and he would definitely deserve it.
I remember watching him in college, and I was like, man, this guy's going to be a first-round pick. And they were like, this guy's a freshman. When he was playing at Georgia, I was like, he's only a freshman, and he is by far the best player on the field. With Georgia's national championship team with Stetson Bennett and all those guys.
Oh, yeah. And definitely a lot of tight end envy here, as we are pretty devoid of talent there. You know, we got some pretty pedestrian guys on the roster.
I just want a guy who can block and who can catch a ball every once in a great while. Like,
yeah,
I don't care about a dynamic guy anymore.
Yeah, just give me some base level tight end, and we can go from there. But back to Njoku, you're gonna have to put Sternad on him, Cody Barton. But more importantly, probably a safety, because it's just hard. He's such a big-bodied receiver that you put a linebacker on him, he's probably gonna be a little quicker than them. You put a safety on him, he's gonna be a little bigger than them. So hopefully the Broncos can stick someone on him and just limit him, because this Browns offense has plenty of weapons, whether you go from Nick Chubb, who's obviously getting a little better here, Jerry Jeudy, as we mentioned earlier, Cedric Tillman, if he plays, I believe he's still in concussion protocol, but and even Elijah Moore there. So a lot of weapons for this offense to cover.
Well, they talked about one of the big moves it's kind of mystified me is that Rodney Garcia is talking about. Then they heard it. K1 Alexander was picked up by the Lions today. Man, I guess we still have Zach Cunningham still. So, like, I don't know. I thought he played well. I thought every time he stepped onto the field, he played excellent. I don't know why you would move on from him.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. They had to decide between Quan Alexander or Zach Cunningham to sign to the roster. They chose Zach, and Alexander went to the practice squad, and the Lions had an injury with Rodriguez. His first name's escaping me, but he tore his ACL. So they had went and poached Alexander. So it sucks to see him go, but we do have a few guys here that have been stepping up, and you can't really get touches for all of them. So
I just feel like, he was just so consistent. Like, I don't know. He was a known factor rather than an unknown factor, I feel like.
Oh, 100%. He played with his hair on fire for sure, and he made some big hits. And even it's crazy to see this defense, how we've talked for years, how we don't really have a solid inside linebacker. And now we just have an amalgamation of guys that we were getting rid of, like Sternad, Cody Barton, he was a cast off, and Quan Alexander, he's older, and even Zach Cunningham, who led the league in tackles, I believe, 1 year. And it's like, and they're just making it work. And with a Vance Joseph defense, if you would have told me that before the season, I would have called BS.
It's insane that we've drafted three inside linebackers and we pushed them all to the edge. With when we had Browning, and then we have Drew Sanders, and then maybe one other person. But yeah, they just say, like, we feel like we got the guy, and they're like, nah, he's better pass rusher. And like, I totally understand, because that's where you want to. That's the bigger impact player, whatever. But it sucks that when you feel like you have somebody there and then they move them out, especially when they're super athletic, like a Drew Sanders.
Oh, definitely. And Michael Ronquillo actually comes in here with some stars. Thank you so much, Michael. Always love seeing your name here in the chat. He says, Kenneth and Dylan, your thoughts on linebacker Drew Sanders' return to the Broncos defense? Well, I'm not sure what to make of it yet. It seems like they still want to stick him there at edge, even though his build isn't really – he's a little smaller for an edge. And, obviously he had some success in college, but you're playing against grown men now, man. He's going to have to bulk up a little bit. I would prefer to keep him inside linebacker, develop him, because they were shaky on him. They moved him to edge this season. It's like, if you're going to develop a guy, you can't just, we're going to keep switching you positions. It's not – it works with some guys in the case of Baron Browning there for a little bit. Obviously, he couldn't stay healthy, and he was inconsistent. Like, he was a better pass rusher than inside linebacker. That's a more explosive position. That's kind of where you want guys, is at edge. But with Drew Sanders – you need to develop him and use him where you draft him. You can't keep flip-flopping. You're going to have to find out where he goes. And with the edge room working so well, I would prefer to have him at linebacker.
Malcolm Rodriguez.
Oh, for the Lions. Yes, that's his name. Thank you.
Yeah, I think right now Drew Sanders is just going to be a special teams guy essentially right now. He'll work his way into the lineup to spell some people here and there, but the edge rushers are playing so well that I don't know how much room he's going to have, especially even our young rookie, Joan Ellis. So we'll see how he does, but he'll definitely get in on the special teams and maybe a couple of plays here and there. Hopefully he can get a sack and turn some heads, and maybe they'll start putting him more into give him some more playing time. But right now it's just special teams, I think, for now.
Yeah, and you probably shouldn't expect too much coming back from an injury like he did. So just work him back easy. Don't put too much on his plate unless you absolutely have to. Knock on wood. Hopefully there's no injuries. But we'll see. And String Guy comes in right after. Thank you, String Guy. Always good to see you. And he says, what are the chances Denver runs the table and wins out? So the Browns, their defense, they got some pieces there that are pretty tough, but I think the Broncos could win that. So, and we'll look ahead to they're playing the Colts, then the Chargers, Bengals, then Chiefs. So the Colts, I'm not overly worried about. They got a solid defense as well, but
their quarterback's starting to play better.
Yeah, he is. Anthony Richardson is playing a little better here, but he hasn't seen a defense like the Broncos. And he's still a young quarterback with how much they blitz, about 42% of the time, the highest rate by far in the NFL. So
I think I saw something where in his last game he had like 1 throwing touchdown and 2 rushing touchdowns. But yeah, it's weird. I never even heard of the guy in college. He came out on the pros as a rookie, and everybody was all about him. And then he got hurt, and then he had that crazy I can't come back into the game kind of situation. And then and now he's starting to turn it around. So hopefully he turns it around in his next game and not against us, the game following us, I guess. But
yeah, he was, he didn't play very much in college, but you got the big arm, you got the mobility, you got a lot of tools, and that's very attractive to NFL teams. And obviously there was that snafu with him taking himself out of the game. Hey, I'm tired. I don't really believe in benching him. It's like a guy who needs reps, and you're like, oh yeah, we're going to bench him for Joe Flacco, who played pretty terrible. So he's some guy who needs more reps, and I ultimately don't think he'll be too much a problem against the Broncos. Going into Chargers game, that's one that's very interesting, especially moved into that Thursday time slot. Justin Herbert looks very good with Jim Harbaugh there. Hard-nosed running football team. Obviously, the Broncos lost last time, even with a late rally. Short week, but a familiar opponent. What are your thoughts there, Kenneth?
With the Chargers, I know we always play them tough. We actually kind of have their number most of the time. But we'll see. They're playing super well right now. I think it's going to be a low scoring affair, and it's essentially who has the ball last and which defense can hold up on that last drive. I think the defense is going to be the more exciting thing to watch in that last drive than the offense, just because they're so aggressive. I hope they don't fall back into a shell of some prevent situation and let everything in front. I hate that when you're shutting a team down the entire game.
Yeah.
Just keep playing what you're good at, and that's what I want to see. Maybe they find a way to get down. San Diego finds a way to get down there. There's a call that goes against us. Everybody's mad, but then Herbert throws a pick six to PS2 to seal the game. That would be dope. And is it in LA too?
I believe it is. Let me take a look here.
If it is, I would throw the ball into the stands too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. In fact, in Los Angeles. Alrighty. So,
Yeah.
and then after that, you have the Bengals, who just seem cursed. Honestly, like you have Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow absolutely lighting it up, but the defense fails them or what have you, and they just haven't been able to put it together this season. Unfortunately for them, great for us. They're in the playoff hunt at 4-7 somehow. There's a lot of talk, they can run the table and all this, but I just don't know if their defense is going to be able to keep them in the game. And it's one I could see going either way, but very winnable at nonetheless.
Yeah. What was the last? Who's the last week? That's the Chiefs, and then they might not even be playing anybody.
Yeah. So maybe say they drop this game. That they just won today against the Raiders, then they have and the Bills going to keep winning, and there's a real fight for that first seed. There's only one bye week or one bye, and that's for the first seeded team. It really depends on how the Chiefs are looking. Maybe they do want to play their starters and they want to upset Denver if it's a close race to keep on to that wild card spot, but hopefully, I would like to beat them at full strength, but if they're going to rest their guys, let's say that's the scenario, I think that's a very winnable game, and the Broncos could very well win out. It's not out of the realm of possibility, folks.
They got their running back today too, didn't they?
Pacheco, yep. He had his first game back today and had a couple of mean runs there, so hopefully the Broncos can keep him contained. Looking at the chat.
What are your thoughts on Chubb? I know he's only running for 40 yards a game or 3.2 yards a carry or something like that. And it's kind of, it's just 1 year removed. It reminds us of Javonte, how he was a shell of himself after that. Hopefully he can, the following year, he can return back to form. I think he's a free agent. Which maybe you get him for cheap. Maybe we get rid of Javonte, keep Estime, McLaughlin, and everybody else can just kick rocks.
Wouldn't that be the dream, especially with how well this offensive line is playing? Let's see what else we have here in the chat. We have Ricky Flores coming in on Facebook. Thank you, Ricky, for joining us here in the chat. He said, "What did Jerry Jeudy have to say?" Well, I talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show, but I'll bring that up again. Jerry Jeudy basically said, "Hey, when I come back up there, I want to whoop some ass." Obviously, he didn't have a great time here in Denver. Partially the Broncos' fault, partially his. Like we talked about, he's very inconsistent, pretty loud on social media, jaw-jacking with Steve Smith on the sidelines even during the game. He's going to talk mess. He's coming back to Denver, and he wants to have a big game, and he's going to be locked up with PS2, or they might try and isolate some matchups like Eric mentioned earlier with Jaquan McMillan, who's struggled a little bit in these past couple of games.
Funny thing about PS2 and Jerry Jeudy is they know each other from before Alabama. I guess from way back when they were little kids, and they said that PS2 used to be a running back, and he was a really good running back. Financially wise, it's good he went to go over to be cornerback. But it's just really cool to hear the stories about that, because he was it was when he was on the Broncos, they were asking about him. It's really cool to play with your former player. He's like, I've known him forever. We go way back. So There's not going to be any kind of animosity between those two. I feel like they're brothers. I don't know if he's going to try to rile him up, but he's going to try to shut him down and be a friendly competition. I don't know. PS2 really doesn't have a weakness, but whatever. But those fast, shifty receivers are really hard to stay in front of, and that's what he excels at. But let's just see if he can reel in the ball and not just get open only to drop it. Hopefully, that's what happens.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's move on. We'll each get a player to watch here since we're winding down the show here a little bit. My player to watch for this game is Mike McGlinchey. Now, had a little bit of a rough game last week. I mean, anyone does against Max Crosby. That guy's a one-man wrecking crew, as Broncos country knows, unfortunately. But I'm sure they'll try and move Myles Garrett around, get some good matchups, because Myles Garrett, much like Max Crosby, is a game wrecker. He had 3 sacks last week against the Steelers and put them in a great position to go win the game. Mike McGlinchey's been struggling a little bit. This past game especially was really rough, whether it be false starts, holding calls. I don't blame him necessarily. I get a little jumpy with Max Crosby staring at me across the line, and it's going to be no different with Myles Garrett.
Yeah, Myles Garrett. He looks like the mountain, like the black version of the mountain or something. He's so big. And I think he does like windmill dunks and all that stuff in basketball. He's pretty good at basketball as well. Those guys are just freakishly strong, insanely quick for how big they are. Really smart players, students of the game. You have to be on your P's and Q's when you're guarding them and are blocking them, and they're gonna get you every once in a while. It's just inevitable. So he just has to eliminating the turnover. I mean, the penalties is a big one because they kill drives. The only ones that are suitable for penalties is when you have a free shot at the quarterback. Like, I don't mind if you tackle the guy down to the ground in that situation. But yeah, hopefully he can step up. I think he'll be all right. He's a solid right tackle. He just Max Crosby. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plans out. We'll find out after the first quarter, most likely.
Definitely. And is there one player in particular that you think the fans should have their eyes on Monday night?
Maybe Brandon Jones and Njoku. He's been a pleasant surprise all year. He does nothing but perform and make big plays. I never really see him be the reason why there's a touchdown or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think he's going to play pretty well on him. And I don't know. What he's like on a 3-year contract? I'm not sure.
I believe it was a 2 to 3 year contract,
okay.
But
he's well worth it.
He was
still in Brandon Jones.
Yeah, that was a sneaky good signing. We grabbed him in the offseason. I was like, he mostly played third safety in Miami. So he was all right, and then he comes to Denver, and like last week, he gets that momentum changing interception, and the Broncos don't look back. They steamroll the Raiders after that, and an awesome addition. And he might be the guy to put on Njoku, because I think he could match some physicality there, and he has enough speed to keep up with him. So That'll be something to look forward to. And let's move a little forward here. We're going to get to the injury report. So as of today, we'll just focus on some of the limited and did not practice players here.
Yeah.
So for limited practice, you have Miles Harden, cornerback. Jermaine Ifedi, the guard, was also limited. Did not practice Sam Kamara, their defensive end. Greg Newsome has an abdomen injury, and he was also limited. And as far as did not practice, you have Jeff Swain, their tight end, Cedric Tillman, which is a big one, Juan Thornhill, and Jedrick Wills. So a couple injuries to the offensive line there and in their secondary. So the Broncos should look to exploit that. And on the Broncos side of the ball, something fans will love to see, Zach Allen full practice. So it's likely he'll be playing.
Okay.
A little bit limited practice there for John Franklin Myers for his shoulder, but he should be on track to play. And looks like full practice for everyone else. The only one who did not practice is Riley Moss, so it seems Levi Wallace will have to step into that role for another week.
It's nice that we're not running up against a team with two insanely explosive receivers, I guess. We can manage with the guys that we have now, but yeah, I'd rather just give him that extra week to rest to recover from that knee injury.
Yeah, especially going into a bye week after. Give him a couple weeks to rest, recover. I mentioned earlier in the show, cornerbacks, it's a thing. Even if they have a minor injury, you're at 90%, 95% even. That's all it takes for a receiver to take advantage of.
True.
There's a lot of backpedaling, your ankles, fluidity with your hips, any minor thing, one step off and you're cooked. The guy's running right past you. So it'll be better for Riley to sit here for a couple weeks.
When I watch Travis Hunter, I know he's an amazing offensive player. I see him as a defensive player playing offense. He's so athletically such a freak that he can play offense because he can just like feel his way through it, and he has ridiculous like 50-50 ball situations where he can just beat everybody out. But the way he plays on defense is so pretty. Like the way he just flows around the field, and he's like guarding his guy, but he's not. Like he's watching everybody else, and it's like he has a string on that guy, and he can just follow him around. And once they throw it, he pulls off his guy and he picks the ball. Sorry. But yeah, that's what makes it. I don't know. It's special to see one of those special cornerbacks like that, and PS2 is in that same situation, and he's actually farther ahead, whatever, essentially, because he's playing against better talent, and he's shown that he could play that much better. But I forgot why I originally brought that up. I tried to swing it back, whatever. And I'll think of it.
In terms of like the injury to Riley Moss and how even just a little bit
of
an injury can screw up that fluidity, that footwork, the backpedaling and whatnot. But yeah, Travis, he's going to be a dog, man. It's a shame. Obviously, the Broncos have been winning a lot, and it's the only reason that sucks is because we don't have a shot at a guy like Travis Hunter who could help on both sides of the ball, even though I view him more at corner. Oh, done. Definitely. Well, so we are coming to the end of the show here. Kenneth, why don't we get to predictions? What do you see in the Broncos' future here on Monday night?
I see Jameis Winston hanging in there with us for a little bit for some reason, giving us a little bit of a scare. But then I see us pulling away and sealing it up with a touchdown later in the game. 27-20 Broncos. So yeah, that's what I have.
Awesome. Love that. And I'm going to tease you guys because I have a show tomorrow night, so I'll reveal my predictions there, or you could check out the articles that we have up at Mile High Huddle. We have the roundtable predictions. Make sure to go check those out, and you can come in tomorrow and tell me why I'm right or wrong.
I have a teaser too. He's going to be on tomorrow with his host, Ron White, the super famous comedian. Show up at the show and find out if I'm telling the truth.
Right. Love that.
I love Ron. He's so awesome.
He's a great guy. He's love my co-host. We work pretty well together.
I didn't know about that until I talked to him when at the meeting. I was like, wait a minute, I just thought about that when I said it. And he was like, yeah, I get that all the time.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Oh, and my last question for you before we got 1 minute left. Who do you have winning the Heisman?
Oh man, I think it's got to be Travis, right? I mean, obviously Ashton's having a great season for running back, but just how many players have we seen play like Travis, both sides of the ball, all those snaps, and be productive on both sides of the ball?
He's nominated for every single award except the cornerback one, which is weird because that's the strongest thing he's at.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, Ashton Jeanty, he's amazing. I would love to have him on the Broncos just because of the yards after contact. He gets like 8 yards a carry. It's insane. I know that he hasn't played the best talent, whatever, but they played Oregon and they played them to the end. But yeah, I also have Travis. Who does everybody else have in the room? Does anybody else have Jeanty, Travis, or somebody else? And what else is your guys' predictions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just since this chat was flowing so good tonight, we don't have Scott in the background, so we're running the show back here. But we do have Phil McLaughlin coming in with some starts. Thank you, Phil. As always, love seeing your name popping up in the chat. And he says, does Benito get 2 or more sacks this week? I think 2's realistic. The like we mentioned earlier, 47 sacks given up, the second most in the NFL by the Browns. Benino uses his quickness. He could bend around the edge very well, and he's been a more complete player this year. I could definitely see him getting 2 or more sacks on Monday.
Yeah, I see him maybe not the 2 or more sacks, but 2 or more quarterback hits and 1 sack.
I like it. All righty. Gonna peruse here for a couple more chats. Oh, we have Michael Ronquillo helping us close out the show as he always does. Thank you, Michael. It says, great show tonight, Kenneth and Dylan on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Bo Broncos. Thank you so much, Michael. Always a pleasure to have you in here and just hanging around and asking very thought-provoking questions, keeping the conversation moving.
Michael's awesome. Yeah, and if we don't get your question on the show tonight, be sure to put it in the bottom on YouTube or Facebook. And I always check the YouTube for sure, and I try to answer people's questions that we didn't get to on air. So
exactly. Well, folks, this has been a great show tonight for Dove Valley Deep Divers. We just want to make sure that we give you a few parting words here. Obviously, you want to follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. Mine is at Dylan Von Arks MHH, and we have Kenneth here at Kenneth_MHH. You also want to follow us on X, the mothership, Mile High Huddle. Of course, you can find all our articles, reposts of the podcasts, if you can't get enough of us yapping here tonight. Also, make sure to do that at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And get your merch, man. I have a MHH shirt that I got about 5 or 6 years ago. Get your stuff updated, guys. Don't be a bum like me. Go get your merch and
wow.
Right. And we also on Instagram, Mile_High_Huddle. And if you can't do any of that, the best thing you could do, as you see on the ticker there at the bottom, subscribe, like, and share. A little bit goes a long way. I meet fans all the time when I'm out and about, whether I'm out with some friends, I'm at a heavy metal show like I like to do. I always find Broncos fans, so make sure to spread the word, man. You guys make this podcast tick. You make our views go up, and we want a broader reach to find Broncos fans just like you. And just to thank a couple of people who hopped in and showed a little extra love tonight: David McGilrath, Michael Ronquillo, and Phil McLaughlin. Thank you guys so much. It's always great to see your names in the chat. You guys are consistent. You're awesome. You're superstars. And we just love having you a part of the conversation every single night.
Definitely. Sorry about earlier, too.
It's all right. We got her up and running. Is there any final words you have for us, Kenneth, before we ship on out of here?
I guess not. Yeah, just enjoy your weekend. Since you won't have anything going on Sunday, whatever, because there's no Broncos. Like, try to get outside if it's nice outside. And then I see Michael Ronquillo saying Ashton Genchi, his first running back to have 2,000 yards since Barry Sanders. I'm pretty sure Ron Dane and Melvin Gordon and a couple other people did it, but
Marcus Allen, I believe, too.
Yeah, but he's out. I would love to have the guy on my team, but yeah, you all have a great night. Stay safe. Don't drink and drive, and watch out for the ice, and go check your tire pressure. I found out that my tires needed to be replaced ASAP, and if I didn't do that, I could have been in an accident. So go check your tire pressure.
Yeah, folks, make sure to be careful this colder weather out. It's getting pretty icy on the roads, but thank you, folks, as always. This has been Dove Valley Deep Divers, and have a great rest of your night. Go Broncos.